Yo, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, UFC edition. Today, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of UFC, going to preview UFC 276, talk about UFC 256, talk about the fight night that just happened this past Saturday, and get into all things UFC. We have our UFC MMA expert with us, Mr. Chuck Marlowe. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing exceptional. How's everybody doing out there?
And I think they're doing good, especially the UFC fans waiting to hear what you have to say about these big events coming up.
Sir,
so
got
Chuck,
a lot heading for us.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with what happened at 275?
Yeah, we can start with 275.
All right, man. Chuck, the floor is yours. Break down what happened in 275 for us, for the people who missed it.
275, the main event was Teixeira and Prochazka. So that was a battle for the light heavyweight title that's been bouncing around for the past 8 months, like I think between 3 different fighters in the past 8 months. So it's touched about 3 fighters' hands, which hasn't happened in a long time because previously it was John Jones who was holding that title for like as long as he could and no one else was able to touch it. You had Shevchenko versus Talia Santos, which that one was a very interesting fight, left a sour taste in some viewers' mouths. And then you had Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk Part 2, which didn't last as long as Part 1 and was still just as wild. And then you had a lot of other fights on that card with Andre Fialho, who's been just putting out so many fights this month, in this year, I mean, and with Jake Matthews, who just showed he was on another level of striking that day.
So if you had to give what was the best fight on the card for 275, what would you pick?
I'm going to go with Jury and Glover. It did win fight of the night, but it's just because it was such a back and forth fight. And it's one of those fights where you're like, you know who was the clear-cut winner, but it was still, at the end of the day, it could have went either way. And I like how just they both went out there and they executed their game plans according to what they wanted to go out there and do. And they should put a fight on for the fans. That was a fight for the fans. It was really good. And this man won with 28 seconds left in the 5th round. He made sure to seal the deal there at the end and make sure that it didn't have to go to decision.
Okay. Who do you think who had the most standout performance in this fight?
In this fight?
I meant the whole card. I'm sorry.
Whole card, I'd say Talia Santos. She really made a name for herself. She may have lost according to the judges, as the controversy lies there. But she put on the performance because Shevchenko's never been challenged like that before. And Shevchenko has been holding on to her belt for a long time, like most of these fighters are, like Kamaru Usman, John Jones, GSP. It's like the fighters you think about that hold on to the belt for a very long time. She's been holding on to the belt for a super long time. And Santos really challenged her and put her in a box and really showed that Shevchenko can be stopped. And I don't necessarily agree with the judges' scorecard at the end of the day for that fight. I gave it to Santos. I think Shevchenko has a lot to work on there. So she has her wrestling. She got out wrestled. That's the first time I've seen Shevchenko get out wrestled like that. She lost all the scrambles. She got bad positioning. Santos used her leverage in every single positioning, and she really showed and executed her game plan. So it's a shocker, and I honestly thought Santos should have won, but I mean, split decision, and when you leave it in the judge's hands, it never goes your way. And she had a cut over her right eye, and Valentina Shevchenko, who should have had the clear hand and better striking stand-up game, she didn't even win that either. She wasn't too good on her feet with her having a blinded right eye, and she could have just threw left hooks the whole time from the side. She wouldn't have even seen it coming, but she still executed her game plan really well. So I give it to Talia Santos. She really, really showed that she's going to be around for a long time in the women's flyweight division.
Is there anyone on this card who showed you that it's time for them to get a title shot in the future?
There's no one who really did that besides Zhang, I'd say. I think out of everyone on this card, Zhang should be going back up for that belt after that fight. She made up for some of her usual things that she does. She didn't fight a fight that she usually fights. She didn't stand and bang the whole time. I mean, yes, she went out there and she scrapped and she threw some hands and she like did her little bit of like evasiveness where she was fighting and she was getting into some scrambles where she was they were both throwing a lot of hands and stuff like that. But I think she really showed that she has a lot more crispness. She's being a lot better using her wrestling, which, I mean, have you seen the size of Zhang Weili? She had, oh my gosh, like for a woman, she is so defined and built and just like cut. If you look at her compared to any of the other women in that division, she is just a lean machine. So it's good that she's been working with Triple C, Henry Cejudo, getting her wrestling down and getting that executed. If she can use her wrestling like she did in any other fights, then she will be dominant in this division because I don't think there's anyone who has much raw strength as her, unless you get her put up against like a Jessica Andrade, but Andrade doesn't have it all well put together like Zhang does. So I say she goes back up for the belt again sometime soon, especially with it bouncing out of the hands of Rose. So I see them potentially doing a Zhang Weili versus Rose part 2, and then the winner of that goes up for the belt, or they maybe just throw her up for the belt automatically already against Carla Esparza.
Wow. That's a good analysis. Anything else from 275?
Andre Fialho.
Okay.
I know he didn't win, but the man has fought, I think, 4 or 5, maybe even more times this year. Like I've seen him card after card, 2 weeks like worth of notice preparation, and he's just been out here putting on fight after fight after fight. So huge props to him because, like I said, most UFC fighters nowadays, they don't make that much money because they don't fight that many times within the year. But this guy has been making his paper where it's due. I know he lost, which is his first loss out of like 5 or 6 in this past few fights, which for someone who's been putting on so many fights, that's ridiculously good. But Jake Matthews, huge hats off to him because he showed that he's been working on his game. It's the most polished Jake Matthews we've ever seen in that octagon, and he's been sharp and precise with his swinging, and he just looked like he was on a different level. So maybe you see him move up in the welter rankings, and maybe he can put a little bit of a question mark to if you can get to a title run. Maybe you have to get a ranking next to his name first, but with that, he might end up going up against a highly ranked fighter after beating Fialho like the way he did.
Okay. Let's move on. There's actually a fight night that happened this weekend, which was a lot more exciting than I thought it was going to be. And that we were in the same vicinity watching some of it together as well. And others saw it was a very exciting fight night this past Saturday.
Correct. UFC Austin. They were out of Austin, Texas. It was one of the best fight cards I've seen in a long time. This was a fight night for the fans. This was definitely one put on for the fans. Talk about a bunch of knockouts, none of the fights making it out of the first round. I think at one point the average fight time was 4 minutes and 54 seconds, and that included a 15-minute fight, which went to decision. There was only 2 fights, I think, on this card that went to judges' decision at the end of the card, and then the rest were all like either first-round knockouts or second-round knockouts, or you even had some submissions thrown in there. But it was a very, very good card. A lot of good striking put on display and a lot of good execution for some people. in this card.
Chuck, what were some of your favorite moments from this fight night that just happened on June 18th?
Adrian Yanez, oh my gosh, this man was in his hometown. Well, he's from Texas, boy, and he was there in Texas. The fans went wild for that fight because him and Tony Kelly had a lot of beef going into that card beforehand, and there was a lot of trash talk, talking on families' names and things like that. And so for them to go out there and execute the way he did and just dominate him in that round, the way his striking was so crisp and precise, and just he'd really put a name out there for himself in that bantamweight division, and moved himself up. Jaquan Buckley, he's starting to make a name for himself. He's moving up a lot now in this division. He just knockout after knockout after knockout, and it's all been highlight reel. They had to stop it. This time it was a technical knockout due to a doctor's stoppage before the start of the third round, because Albert Durev's, his eye was just so swollen because the power of Jaquan Buckley, like left a knot on his eye. He just had a titty sitting there on his eye, and he just really put him out. So I think that was really good. And then Kevin Holland, performance of the night. Kevin Holland is going to keep rising with performances like this. He's making a name for himself in that welterweight. So there's some new welterweights maybe coming up and moving in up in that division now that a lot of the people keep getting beat out by Kamaru Usman. So we'll see who moves up more. We got to have more fighters make names for themselves to put themselves up against that belt to see if Kamaru Usman can really dominate this division the way he's been doing.
True. Yeah, just each fight was a knockout. Knockouts are how you really keep the casual fan engaged.
Yes, knockouts are the way that you keep new people coming in, and that's how you also keep new people from going out. Because when you see fights that are boring and they draw out, and when I say boring, I mean in a sense from a casual viewer who wants to see nothing but violence and just pure knockouts and pure striking. So that keeps the fans in there, and it keeps pulling more people in. So I think that was a very, very, very great card for that aspect.
And with that being said, we got 276 looming. This is actually going down July 2nd, T-Mobile Arena. Chuck, there's a lot of big fights on this card, man. Take it away. What should we be looking for? And who are you predicting is going to win some of these fights?
Where do I start? This main card, have you seen the main card for this thing?
I'm looking at it right now.
And it is huge card. I mean, when you have Israel fighting on a card, it's usually something where they're trying to put on a big performance. Israel at this point, I guess you can say he's a box office name. His antics on Twitter, his antics on any social media platform, his reign right now in the middleweight division has been long and extensive. So I think this is a point where he can really establish himself, or either it's a make or break thing for him. It's going to either decide whether he's really a long-standing person. You maybe put him in those conversations with a Kamara or a John, maybe in those title runs. When you start talking about title runs, dominant title runs, Tyron Woodley's, GSPs, things like that. So you run up against Jared Cannonier, I can never pronounce his name right. A man has knockout power. He's explosive. He is dangerous, man. And he can really get you. Once he gets his hands on you, you're pretty much done for. So for the type of fighter that Adesanya is, where he's elusive, he likes to evade, and he likes to be a striker, and he likes to slip into those gaps and those windows. I think this is a good matchup because Cannonier, and when he tries to go in, he's just very powerful. So I feel like if he catches him slightly and he knocks him and he stuns him and puts him in some danger, we can finally see Adesanya in some danger, and we can finally see what he does in a fight like that, if he can take it to the ground, or what he will do when he's hurt. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
So does he have the most to gain, everything to lose in this card? Or are there other people who have more to gain in this?
Max Holloway has the most to gain and the most to lose in this one.
Okay.
He's going against Volkanovski for the third time, and he's lost to him already. No, it's either the third or fourth time. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's the third. but he's already lost to him 2 or 3 times. And this is the only person that anyone wants to see Volkanovski fight, because Max Holloway is the only one who really competes when it goes to Volkanovski, because Volkanovski is on another level in that featherweight division after seeing him fight Korean Zombie. Like, that fight, they had to stop it and call it off because the man was just beating his ass so damn good. They're like, there's no reason for this fight to continue. He sucks. And he's on another level than everyone else. So why even let him just fight this fight anymore? Max Holloway's hands are dangerously fast. I want to see that this is a proving point for Max Holloway. He can either get over the hump of Alexander Volkanovski or he can't get over the hump of Alexander Volkanovski. And he's a very young fighter, and he's already held the belt. So this is somewhere where you decide, do you maybe move to another weight division after this? Or do you keep trying to attack and do you keep trying to come after this belt? But the question is, do they keep putting you up against the belt or against someone who keeps beating you? So this is a very, very, very big proving point for Max Holloway. And he really needs to win. I mean, he can't really lose this fight, or it's time to figure out what you're doing next for him.
That means it's you just broke it down to us. That means it's really major for him, for Max. Is it one of those things where if he loses, he's done?
I don't think if he loses, he's done. He's young. I think when I gotta look at how old Max Holloway is, but I think the last time I looked, I think he's 28 or 26, and the man, he's young. That's the thing. When you look at fighters like this, it's not really. It just depends if he wants to have longevity, because some people they could, you either keep pushing, or it's just you decide whether or not you want to keep that fight up, because he can sit and he can relax and say, I held the belt and I've had the belt before and I've had a title run and I did things. But at such a young age, you're like, well, do I keep going? Do I just retire? I mean, he's 30 years old to the T. So he has a lot of time to go, because some people don't even get into this until they're 30. They don't get to this point until they're 30. They don't get their first title shot till they're 30. Hell, look at Glover Teixeira, who didn't really get the belt until he was 41 years old. So, I mean, you have to look at those things, and he could either decide to maybe move on to another weight division to prove himself somewhere else, or he can just stay here. So he has a lot of different things he can do, but it's just up to him what he wants to do, because he has a family, and he is a family man. So
I also see like women's star power. We've got Misha Tate on the card.
Misha Tate, yes, she is fighting on this card against Lauren Murphy, who just came off that loss for the belt not too long ago. So for Misha Tate, this is a proving thing. She wins against Lauren Murphy. This is going to bump her up majorly. She probably takes that 3 spot. Maybe if she can get a little bit of a run, she can start getting in that contention for the women's flyweight title. So I think this is a big one for her. If she wins this will move her up, and she can get somewhere with that.
Okay. Chuck, what other fighters? Because this card, man, it's right before the 4th of July. It's so massive. What other fights are you just looking at before I ask you who's going to win what?
Oh, Pedro Munoz and Sean O'Malley. That's going to be one of the ones definitely talked about. When you have someone who's a superstar, that's what I'll call it, superstar in Sean O'Malley, more of a celebrity than he is he's a fighter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting him as a fighter, but I'm just saying the man has a name for himself out there outside of fighting, with all the other merchandise and other things that he's doing as a social media influencer. But him going against Pedro Munoz, we'll see what Sean can do. We'll see if I'm looking for that point in Sean O'Malley's career where he's proving, okay, I'm here to fight. I'm here to really show that I'm into MMA as a all-round specialist, and I want to win, and I want to get to a title shot. I mean, he's very, very young, so he has time. But if he wants to be a very dominant and something that's unheard of, and be a young, like a John Jones, when you look at those younger fighters, a Max Holloway, who hold the belt and get somewhere with that belt, he has some stuff to prove here against Pedro Munoz. So I think this is a really big, big fight for him. to prove and show what he has capable, especially in that bantamweight division.
Okay. Let us now get some of your picks, and we will work all the way down from bantamweight to the main event. So we got Jessica Rose Clark versus Puligia Stolarenko. If I mispronounced that.
Yeah, I'm not going to get you on that pronunciation because I can't get it down myself either.
She's from Lithuania.
I got Jessica Rose Clark in this one. I think this is both of them coming into I don't remember which fight this is for them in there. I know they're both coming off of losses.
Yep.
So I think that this is a proving point fight for both of them. I know Jessica Rose Clark has more of a name behind herself than Puligia. I can never get that right. But I think this one will be a big one for her to just prove herself. Bounce back off of that last fight. I think she'll definitely win in a dominant fashion. I say second round submission. I'm taking a shot in the dark there, and I'm going to go with submission. I say she wins by submission in the second round. 2 minutes, 30 seconds in. I think she just has a little bit more to prove than she does.
Okay. Next one, you got Brad, who has the number 12 behind his name, versus Still Knox. That's his nickname. What's his real name, Chuck?
Dricus du Plessis.
How are you seeing this fight go?
I have Dricus du Plessis winning, and I think this is. I don't get me wrong, but I think this is his. I want to say it's his second fight in the UFC. I know he has a lot. He's out of South Africa. Very, very, very new and raw fighter. He's 16-2. His record speaks for it. So the man is just dominant in every single fashion. So I think this was just a fight set up by Dana to kind of put him on a pedestal and get him some hype around his name and show that, oh, this guy is coming up in this division. So I have Dricus du Plessis winning this fight by knockout, probably first round.
First round knockout. Okay. Let us keep moving it forward. Man, we got the young Punisher Pedro versus Sugar Shane O'Malley. Who is winning? With Sugar being 15-1, who is winning this?
I have actually Sean O'Malley winning. I mean, the one next to his name, Sean O'Malley, will tell you it doesn't count because he got hurt and broke his ankle in that fight. And he was fighting on a broken ankle, but he lost the fight because Cheeto Vera beat him. But I still have Sean O'Malley winning in dominant fashion. The man's striking is just so crisp. His length at that bantamweight division is something that is very key and very utilized by him in his kicking, and just I think he's going to knock him out in a very highlight Sean O'Malley fashion.
Okay. Who do you got between Jim Miller and Bobby Green?
Oh, man, this one's tough. Jim Miller is a UFC legend, lightweight legend. All respect to him. Shout out to him. He follows me on Twitter.
Hey.
But I got Bobby Green winning. Bobby Green looking to bounce back after that last loss, after he was on a very, very hot run there for a second, and he got that main event and then he lost. So, but he took that fight on 2 weeks' notice. So big shout out to him. But I have the King Bobby Green winning in very, very dominant fashion. Man, striking is just impeccable. The way he can fire from the hip when you don't know where the strikes are coming from. It's just beautiful to watch. But yeah, Bobby Green by knockout.
Who do you have between Hall versus Munoz?
So Uriah Hall, coming off of that last fight, I have him winning against Andre Munoz. I think he'll just really – it's Uriah Hall. I mean, you look at one of the legends in the game, that is him. And I think he still has a lot to prove still to get to that point where he wants to get a title. So I have Uriah Hall winning this by decision.
Okay. Got some decisions going through. Let's keep on moving it up. What about Jessica I versus Macy Barber?
So yeah, Jessica I's supposed to be bouncing off that last loss. Macy Barber, who I forget how old she is. I think she's still like 23, 24. Don't get me mistaken. Very, very young fighter. She had a very good run when she started coming into this promotion and stuff. But I say she wins this one, and she really shows why she had that discussion with being in there for John Jones type of people. You know, when you start talking about younger fighters really making a run, I think she bounces back from those two losses that she suffered early on, and she really proves that she is meant to be in that contention for a legendary fighter.
What about Ian Gary versus Gabriel Green?
Oh, I got Ian Gary by a mile. That man is undefeated out of Ireland. He's still, that's the Conor McGregor like protege now. That's what I like to call him.
Okay.
The man knows how to work a mic, and he knows how to get to the fans. He's very young, very raw, coming out of Ireland. So I think he's trying to do something very Conor McGregor-esque. So I see him whooping Gabriel Green by a mile.
What about Robbie versus Brian?
Robbie Lawler versus Brian Barberina. I have that one's tough. I say I got Brian Bam Bam Barberina because Robbie, I think, is starting to get to that point. Don't get me wrong, Robbie's not washed, but Robbie still, I just don't think he's going to get anywhere eventually down the road with this run that he's on. I think he's just fighting the fight at this point. It's because it's something he loves to do, improve himself. But I have Brian probably by I probably have him go into decision at the end of the fight.
So then you have Brad Riddle versus Jalen Turner.
Oh, yes, this fight will be fun. So Jalen the Tarantula Turner, you know the name Tarantula is just like Kevin Durant for a reason. The man is a long, lanky fighter. Mm-hmm. He uses his length very well in the cage, very elusive, very great striking. When you start talking about like the Conor McGregor, not the Conor McGregors, the Sugar Sean O'Malley's, the Adesanyas, the John Jones, the Anderson Silva's, people who use their length to their key. I don't know. I can't think of the word there, but they're very, very, very strong fighters, very, very lengthy fighters. And I have him making a proving point against a ranked fighter because I think Dana threw this one so he can get a ranked fighter and really make a name and move up in the division. So I have him winning by knockout, probably second round.
Big women's fight that a lot of people are going to be tuning for the return of Misha Tate. Misha Tate versus Lauren Murphy. Who is winning this chug?
Oh, this one's tough. You have two fighters coming off of losses. One in Misha Tate, one in Lauren Murphy going up for that belt. I think this one's tough because I know Lauren Murphy wants to bounce back and get back at that title after losing in the title shot. But Misha Tate, she has to bounce back too at some point. So this one's really, really tough to call. But I think with the way that the fights have been going recently, I have Lauren Murphy by KO, maybe second round, actually. I think she really still wants to go after that belt. She has more grit to her than Misha right now. And I think she still has some things she needs to prove. And I think she maybe goes back to the game plan and she goes back to the gym and she worked on what she needed to work on. I think she proves something to everybody and she wants to get back up for that title shot.
Okay. You got Sean Strickland versus Alex. How's that one go?
Perea?
Mm-hmm.
Now I got Alex by a mile. So this is Dana White playing to his fighters. This is a new fighter, 2-0. You have, I think, let's see, he's third on the card. He's right before one of the championship fights. So it's kind of like one of those co-main events of a very, very, very big event. And he's only had two fights in MMA. And he's only had one fight in the UFC so far. But this is the only fighter to ever beat Israel Adesanya. So he's playing to the card. He's playing to the fighter. He's playing to the hype. There's a lot of hype around Alex, but I mean, it's warranted. This man was a Muay Thai specialist. His striking and his ability, he's one of those lengthy fighters at 6'4" in that division, in that middleweight division that Adesanya's in, and he wants to go up. That's a fight that I can see Dana White trying to gear. The only fighter to ever beat Adesanya versus Adesanya. So he's definitely working the promotion there very well. Sean Strickland, though, 25-3. I'm not discrediting him at all. But this man, Alex, is on another level. When you talk about a combat sports specialist, like a striking specialist, like someone who's really been in the game and craft since they're probably like 2 years old, like just working on his craft. The man's striking is impeccable. So the hype that he has behind his name is very, 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 very warranted. Like when you think about how Michael Chandler was brought in, I don't think the hype was as warranted as it is behind his name. So I'm going to love this fight. I'm going to love how he knocks him out, probably in a dominant fashion. I'm sorry, Sean Strickland, that I'm discrediting you so much right now because you are a legend to this game. But Alex is going to win by a mile, a long mile.
You said the fight Max Holloway cannot lose. He is fighting against the champ Alexander. Chuck, who are you taking?
Oh, I got a hot take on this one. I got Max Holloway by knockout.
Wow.
I think Max comes in here a lot sharper than before. I mean, he came in sharper on the second fight, and he still didn't win. And I think Max Holloway still is very young. Like I said, he can always improve, and I think he works on things that he needs to improve. The man striking and boxing is great. His hands are just as fast as Volkanovski. So I think that is one thing when you talk about a fighter. He might be making his hands faster than what they need to be. So I think that might have been something he worked on. He worked on his striking, probably his ground game, his wrestling, his kicks, his defense. I think Max Holloway separates himself like he needs to do, and he takes this fight. I got to go in decision. Decision's a hard one to gauge, but if it goes down to decision, I'm got Max Holloway in, if not fourth round knockout, just because they both get gassed out from the level of output that it's going to be a lot of striking in this fight, a lot of output from both fighters.
The main event, Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier. How do you say his last name, Chuck? Cannonier?
Cannonier, yep.
Cannonier. Ooh, got that right. Main event, who do you got?
I got Adesanya. As much as I want to go for Jared, just for an upset basis, I got Adesanya. I think his elusiveness he'll show why he's a champ. I think he'll show and he'll separate himself. I know he's had a long time off, but maybe he's been working on his craft like he should be and really polishing and excelling in his game. So we'll see if he's real MMA, a true striker, a true martial artist in the Muay Thai specialty. And I think he really separates himself and shows off his striking against Jared, who's going to definitely be going out trying to knock his head off. So he's going to be a lot more elusive, be able to slide some strikes in there. I know Jared's going to have to go in there and try and fight a more polished game. So maybe he goes in there on a sharper game and maybe he perfected his craft maybe better. But I still have Adesanya, maybe fourth round knockout.
Okay. And that is the whole UFC 276 card coming July 2nd from T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas. Main card, 10 p.m. And can't wait to see how Chuck's picks are. Remember to follow Chuck on Twitter as he tweets through all of the big UFC cards. Chuck, anything else?
Just look out for John Jones' return. September timeframe, probably, maybe November, somewhere around the later in the year, the month. Look out for that fight announcement, maybe potentially even at 276 or 277. They'll make that announcement, John Jones versus Stipe. I can see that coming in the works. That's definitely being worked in the background. But there's a lot of fights being announced, so everyone just keep your eye. Follow UFC's page if you haven't. Have those notifications on for me. I know I retweet a lot of their stuff. So if you're looking for any alerts on anything, But UFC is really, really, it's their time of the year. No other sports going on, so time to shine.
You heard the man. And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you check out 276. We will be back a couple weeks after 276 to review it and preview 277. That's happening at the end of the month. With that being said, this is the L7C podcast signing out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.